we had to do this in two shows because Antonia Edwards, ADOS New England, was so extraordinary that we had to get that show up and out of us as she shared with us about her Uncle Sonny, whom I believe the hospital was complicit in killing him while claiming he died from the COVID. And this is what is challenging about the numbers they're reporting. I believe they're underreporting the numbers because not all the states are reporting on ethnicity and who is actually dying from the COVID. So I believe the 32% that we're working with in our demand letter for a COVID stimulus exclusively for Black descendants of American chattel slavery, BDOACs, that was written by Dawn Page from CBAC, Concerned Black American Citizens. Thank you, Dawn. I believe that that number is grossly understated because not all the states are reporting on it. So I have as my guest right now, thank you. Hi, Vicki. I love you, Black. I love you, strong, sis. Thank you for always supporting me in the show. Please share about the show. Let everyone know that I'm on for a part 2. I just want to split the show up so I can run them in succession, as I've been doing with the watch parties since I got time to do that. Hi, Joelle. Thank you so much for joining the live, Joelle. Listen, everybody, go. Joelle, please type in your website where we can support you. Joelle Jones, my sister from another Mr., my diaper buddy, ride or die, Dayton, Ohio. She is running for the state Senate seat. Please, they have their mail-in ballots. I need for you to vote for this extraordinary woman who has been in the fights for our rights since we were knee-high to gatepost. We come from Pantheresque fathers, and we have a deep love for American descendants of chattel slavery. ADOS. I mean, the love is deep. Her site, please, votejoellejones.com, state rep. Votejoellejones.com. You can give money to her campaign and you can make phone calls for her. And if you're in Dayton, Ohio, in her district, wait, I don't even think it's a district thing if you're running for state rep, Joelle. Please let us know if the whole state of Ohio, how's that work when you're running for state rep? Is it just a district thing? You know, I'm kind of new to politics in this way. But I do know that she is worthy of your vote. And you guys know Angela Nirvana would never steer you wrong. That's why you love and ride with me. And I love you, Black. I love you strong for it. Yes, so the entire state can vote for Joelle Jones. I need everyone from Ohio to vote Joelle Jones. She is a friend to the show. She is my diaper buddy from Dayton, Ohio. She is one of the coldest. Dayton, Jefferson Township, Townview. Okay, those are the places that can vote for her. And I'm here to tell you, or Townview of Trop. Wait, Dayton, Jefferson, Township, Townview of Trotwood. Okay, it's in the chat. If you are in any of those areas, vote Joelle Jones. Also, Tamara Johnson Shealy, Tamara for Georgia. She's running for the U.S. Senate seat to represent the state of Georgia. She needs your votes. She needs your phone banking. She needs your support at tamaraforgeorgia.com. tamaraforgeorgia.com. Please support both of these incredible sisters in their run for political office to help change how things are going down in this country for ADOS. We love y'all, Black. We love y'all strong. Thank you for your strength and your fortitude to run this race so that people like me can have a big mouth over here in the YouTube, Facebook space and sound the alarm while you guys get into position to deliver ADOS. Thank you. tamaraforgeorgia.com. Yes, so without further ado, I have an extraordinary guest for you today on this part 2 show. This is ADOS Columbus, Dawood Giazan, who has survived the COVID. He has survived the COVID. He's got some extraordinary information about the COVID, its origins, and its attack on ADOS people and the government's complicity. He does a podcast. We will type in what he shares about all the ways in which he is in these spaces fighting for the ADOS. Without further ado, I welcome our illustrious guest. He's on the telephone because he doesn't come on live, and we weren't able to get him in the link. I present to you ADOS Columbus, Mr. Dawood Giazan. Thank you so much for being on the live, Mr. Giazan.
Hello, ma'am. Yes, it's Dawood Giazan.
Thank you. Dawood Giazan. Dawood Giazan. Thank you so much. Can you just give my audience a little bit about yourself, how you came to the movement, and your contributions to the movement to date?
I would like to begin, though, by sharing with your listeners and viewers a beautiful Black woman by the name of Yafa Bey, who owns a spirit shop out of Columbus, Ohio, and it's the Spirit of Pepperest. I wanted to begin there because she's, of course, struggling with this environment. At the same time, she offers African people who are seeking connections to their ancestors a means of doing so. So I'm hopeful also that you'll be able to post her link that I had sent to you.
Absolutely.
Regarding my journey, I was sort of in this space as of 2000 as a result of what happened after the 2000 election. Learning from Dr. Claude Anderson how we needed to be more specific to us to address our needs politically. And as a result of that 2000 election, I got a little angry as to how Blacks were both being used and being blamed for the debacle of what happened, that I really started thinking seriously about those attempts to specify us as a particular group. I even donated for a number of years to the Harvest Institute, run by Dr. Claude Anderson. And this culminated into the rise of Barack Hussein Obama, which, like Tone, I knew from jump that he was not going to be in our best interest. Again, not as specific as Tone and Yvette would later make the argument. I was making very much those arguments by dubbing Barack Obama Bill Clinton in blackface. That's what I dubbed him in the summer of 2007. I saw that he would have an administration that would be pretty much like Bill Clinton, that it would seem like it was for us because he was saying all the right things, but ultimately pushing policies that undermined our reality. And I tried to warn people. I've lost family and friends over Obama's era, and that's okay. I don't just live to be right. I live to make sure Black children get a better future. And so that brings me up into the time that Yvette and Tone began the movement by addressing our critical issues and articulating it in a way that really honed in on where I had been at, as well as taught me a few other things to be even more effective. And now I'm not alone anymore, working now with people I think who were taken in by the image and what that meant for a quote unquote Black man to be in the highest office on the planet. And I believe a lot of the members who heard Tony Yvette are answering in a way to make up for that debacle too many of us fell for. So now we get a chance to make up for it. And like your previous person you had interviewed, I'm on page with her. We need more grassroots activism because especially of what I'm going to share with you today. So that's kind of giving my introduction.
How do we increase our ground roots activism while being ordered to stay at home? I like the idea of doing town halls on the internet. Do you have any ideas on how we can do more grassroots activism given the time that we have at home?
I think that the answer is in your question. We do have more time at home. We do have less time to be distracted. So we need to use the technology that's right before us. Now, we already have, but because we are disproportionately bowing to this expectation of staying home, there's some legitimacy to it, but there's also some that are not so. But in the fact that too many of us are, then we should be using the time we have to more better educate ourselves as well as reach out to one another to have these serious conversations. I said I've been having these serious conversations since 2007 online, and I don't get much interest. I'm having more interest here of late, especially since we started our podcast out of Columbus, Ohio. And I do admit that we're getting a lot of coverage, more so than I expected earlier on. We're getting a lot of people that are listening to our podcast and passing them on. But the numbers, in my opinion, based on how dire our situation is, we need more. And it's equivalent to very same dynamic among human behavior. We had the Emmett Till killing. I believe that my parents and their generation said no more. You know what I mean? They said no more. We're not going to just sit idly by and know that our children could be so easily and blatantly slaughtered like that. And I think that they've gotten to, today it's popular to say ride or die, but it's going to have to go back to the ancient one, do or die. And I think that we're just not in that state of mind, in my humble opinion, not enough of us. And it doesn't take everybody. It takes roughly 2 to 5%, because there's no more than 2% of the people that actually sacrificed their lives, sacrificed their time, and got involved that made the changes that we benefited from that have been whittled away since the rise of Reagan. But that aside, we don't need everybody. We just need more than what we have now. And I'm saying it'll be between 5 and 10% because of how dire things are going, that we need at least that number among our population to be actively involved in utilizing our talents, driving our hearts to make substantive change. If we don't get that within a critical period, maybe 5 years, I think Mr. Vet said, and maybe as much as 10 years. But if we don't pull it off within that 5 to 10 year time frame, we are going to be saddling our children with an undue burden they don't deserve. And right now we're showing signs they can't survive. And we're not even talking about the children. When I talk about the children, you're going to want another time with me because I can go on and on about that.
Absolutely. We will definitely have you back for another show. Let's get into today's topic.
Yes, ma'am.
What would you like to share about what you know to be true about the COVID-19 in relationship to the government and ADOS?
Just to preface it, just a little bit of what you talked about with the first guest, I'm going to create a more nuanced approach that will seem to discount what you were saying, but I really want people to really work hard here and stay with me. I want to begin by saying also that people are dying, right? And as you alluded to somewhat earlier, it's that we're sort of at a loss as to exactly what. And one of the justifiable concerns is that is there some engineering of the biological product at fault? We know from the clerk in South Africa that they were working on a bio weapon specifically aimed at ethnic groups. We know that. That got out. The question is it happening here? I think people should have a concern, but I think we should also bow to the best evidence. I believe, based on the evidence that is gathered so far from the scientists that have been talking about this in particular, there's not much evidence for it being particularly engineered for us. What we can say is that the people that would do such a thing kind of know it's out there, that people are almost even ready for something like that. So why would they do that? That sort of takes away from that. But what they can effectively do, which should really be our sounding board, is that they know the conditions of ADOS. They know that we are disproportionately, for generations, have been zoned into high pollution areas. So now I'm going to get into what I've observed and what I'd like to share with your listeners. There there are there are a total of 7 things that I have concerns about, but the 3 primary ones I want to definitely share in our discussion today. The first one, what we can learn from what happened in Wuhan, China, and Lombardy, Italy, are very specific, and they were known by December of 2019. And they are that overall viruses impact all humanity on the level of humanity's own immune system and its ability to adapt to them. We are bombarded by viruses all the time, throughout the day. Our bodies usually handle them, especially if our immune systems are optimal. So from what we learned, what they learned from Wuhan, China, and Lombardy, Italy, followed up and just reinforced what I'm about to tell you, they knew by December. Our authorities did. And they are, first, and this is going to sound typical, the first thing is that the elderly, along with their disproportionate number of compromised immune systems, that means they're already dealing with what are called comorbid issues, whether they be everything from cancer to heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity. Those are additional factors that drain a person's immune system, and being elderly is another cofactor. The next thing is that helps the virus to spread. Again, all viruses spread, and our bodies, if they're in a healthy immune system, usually handle them. Even new ones, even ones that come by way of animals. So it was also these particular areas, Wuhan, China, and Lombardy, Italy, were highly densely populated. Now, again, this is what we've been sort of bowing to in the idea of being isolated and quarantined, is that we need to stay away from each other so we don't do what nature's always been doing with humanity, allowing what scientists call herd immunity. We've been also told to be afraid of that. But this is going to ring true when I share what I'm going to share a little later. The last thing, and this is what you weren't told, and even today we're not told, we're kind of observing from our own observations that this is the truth, but the government knew this by 2019 in December and didn't say this enough so that people could get the protection that they were really out to protect the American people, particularly ADOS, and I know that's problematic, but they can't claim they're surprised about our disproportionate deaths and then do nothing about it when they knew up front this last thing I'm about to say. Another particular characteristic of the Wuhan, China, and Lombardy deaths, things that cause death, were weakened immune systems, point 1, and point 2, densely populated areas that need to be transmitted more. And this last part is high concentrations of polluting industry, which further overburden the immune system function already. So this is where you get into people that are not necessarily elderly, but people who have lived a long time in polluted areas. Now, that was Wuhan, China, and Lombardy, Italy. Well, they knew in December that those are some factors involved in the death rate there. I submit that a part of their warning of the public by mid-January should have included not only concerns about the elderly and quarantine, they should have also included quarantine or protecting people in the population that live in densely populated areas and people specifically more who were living in zoned areas where pollution is highest. We already know that. Now, the conflict here and the difficulty here become when you quarantine people who are already living in an environment that's highly toxic and then tell them to confine them to their homes. Hopefully this will hit your heart. Tell them to be confined to their homes to be safe from a virus that humanity's been dealing with in various ways and forms before science developed what is called properly vaccines. We're going to be therefore condemning those people to living in more intense toxin environments behind the safety of their doors, breathing in and emoting toxins in their household environment. Notice how this has never been talked about.
No.
So we talk about, go ahead.
This would explain why we are dying
There you go.
In New York and Chicago in particular, and grossly disproportionate numbers.
I bet that when it's all said and done, or preferably before it's all done, that they'll notice the high correlation of death rates will coincide with them being in highly dense areas that are connected to high polluting industries. They didn't mention the high pollution industries on one hand because it would mess with elite white money. On the other hand, they didn't mention it because they didn't care about the people who disproportionately live in those locations, because they should have got FEMA trucks, or they should have got devices that help with air out their homes so they'd be less polluted areas. So whatever virus is already going on, we've intensified the likelihood that they'll suffer from it because we combined it into environments that are poison. See, we're in a situation where we're losing either way. So from your last caller's statement, I agree with you in terms of the national level. We need AOC with your statement, and she sort of detracted from that. Where she detracted from was exactly based on what I just told you. People should be more active, as though an Emmett Till was killed yesterday. Based on this, they're telling us, the other areas I can go into is that if we don't follow the quarantines precisely, what happens? We know that we're going to be disproportionately singled out and confronted by law enforcement for not doing so. And that's in fact been reported. So not only are we going to be confined to increasing levels of toxicity that is triggering people to die of whatever. If it's the coronavirus, okay. If it's a seasonal flu, okay. They'll complacency to conflate the numbers, because that's also what's going on. At the same time, when it becomes law enforcement's job to make sure everybody follows a state edict on this matter, they won't come to their communities and police them, because we know they're violating it all the time. You've seen the pictures. I've seen the pictures. They'll come to our communities and bust up parties. They'll come to our communities, and bust up 5 or more gathering on a street corner or whatever. We will get the brunt of enforcement. So we've set ourselves up for being afraid, number one, which weakens our immune system, by the way. Being afraid of this, just simply being afraid and panicking about it, weakens our immune systems already. But we're disproportionately in areas that are highly toxic anyway. And we're confining people indoors to more toxicity, which I believe is contributing to our disproportionate numbers. We're losing no matter where we go. And then law enforcement is also taking the brunt of enforcing these laws against us.
Yes, they are, because the brothers can't even wear a mask without being harassed by the police.
And that's another thing that trips us up to being ADOS in the country. This is being ADOS right here. So again, I agree with that first person. We need more active from the society, action from the society to become engaged. I hope it would be ADOS, because I think we have a more precise message that appeals to my intellectual life of logic. At the same time, there's other people that are in other groups that are going after reparations and other things. I'm saying just get active, get involved. Your life is now counting on it. And
our life depends on it, because they're sending us home to die, and they're sending us home to die. What you're telling me is they're dying in their homes because of the hazards inside the lead paint in most of these buildings. The water being riddled with lead.
And the atmosphere in which their houses reside, when they close the doors, they're also concentrating levels of pollution that have gotten into the home, gotten into their air ducts, and it's helping to pollute them. So it's already historically overburdened the immune system.
And so when we go to the hospital is another way they're weaponizing COVID against us, because they really don't have enough tests. And what I'm seeing through trending is that rich white people are getting the test. Folks like Cuomo's brother, I can't recall, he's an anchor. He and his wife and children have the COVID, but they're able to luxuriate, on their estate with the best of foods and the best of doctors. When we are symptomatic, we're told to go home several times before we're diagnosed with the COVID. And as you just mentioned, because of the pollution and the lead water and the lead paint in a lot of these high-rise public housing buildings. They have the symptoms of the COVID and are told to go back into the death trap and be on self-quarantine and told not to return to the hospital until they can no longer breathe, which we all know usually results in them turning up in body bags.
In 2017, the influenza hit and 70,000 people died. There was no quarantine. The COVID has been downgraded to 60,000. What we're getting is disproportionate news coverage as compared to 2017. And the influenza was more virulent than the COVID-19. It's less virulent. I'm sorry to go against your point you made earlier. It's less virulent than SARS. It may be a strain, very much may be, but the best evidence is it happened the way they're saying it. I don't believe it's happening exactly the way they're saying it, but it's there. But the reality is, aside from all those points that we can get scientists in here, because that's where I go to get the information, not only is our condition, our environmental condition, the hazard, which is what we should be up in arms about, but they don't have to bioengineer something specific to our ethnicity. They can bioengineer something specific to our condition. So then it's harder to make the case when there is very little evidence for a bioengineered weapon, but it's so easy to make the case for having an ADOS life that by default becomes more susceptible to death in the event of any virus or any calamity that hits masses of people. I suspect that in 2017, Black people with the influenza were disproportionately affected through death, illness, what have you. I suspect the earlier iterations of earlier environmental problems, particularly viruses, Black people were African Americans, ADOS, were disproportionately impacted by those things. It just didn't get the news coverage. So we have two things going on here in terms of news coverage, but go ahead.
Don't lose your thought. I want to speak to your 2017 notion and theory.
Yeah.
In October of 2017, I was deathly ill. I was deathly ill. Now, I am otherwise in extraordinary health.
Yeah.
It's rare for me to catch a cold. I am a healthy 53-year-old. I work out.
Over 39.
You're so sweet. Oh, God, thank you. Lord,
I'm telling the truth.
Well, God bless you for that. I am 53 and I'll be 54 in September. And I work out, I power walk, I live 10-minute walk to the beach. I have a fairly good diet. I have a prayer and meditative lifestyle here in Southern California. And yet I found myself in 2017 having consumed an entire bottle of Robitussin, and I had a cough that would not quit, and I had a fever. And the problem with this and why ADOS life is costing us our lives is because I am a 1099 contractor in the courts. I litigate and negotiate on behalf of doctors who treat the injured workers of Southern California.
Interesting.
And a lot of those injured workers are immigrants, mostly Hispanic, but some Asians that I am around when I go to these courts. So the problem with being a 1099 contractor with a company with no benefits is that when you don't work, you don't get paid. So what does that mean, family? We go to work while sick.
Yeah.
And tied to what Mr. Giazan,
Giazan,
thank you. tied to what he just shared about 2017, I believe his theory because I had to go to the doctor and I was too afraid to take the shots because I'm a crybaby. So I took the antibiotics that they gave in pill form. And it took 6 months to feel better.
Wow.
Because I took the slow route. I took all of the antibiotics as prescribed. They promised me if I were to get the shots that it would be remedied faster. Well, fast forward, I had a relapse of what they called acute bronchitis, walking pneumonia.
Wow.
Now, I'm a healthy person. I take no prescribed medicines. My pressure's great. I don't have diabetes. I don't have heart disease. I have none of the maladies. And yet, severe acute bronchitis, walking pneumonia was able to impact me not once, but twice. I caught it a second time in early 2019.
Wow.
So what people were explaining to me is that once your cold morphs into bronchitis and pneumonia, you will forever be susceptible to your cold morphing into bronchitis, walking pneumonia. The difference in 2019 was I let them give me shots in my buttocks for 3 consecutive days. And it went away within a few weeks, what took 6 months the first time with the pill. Was this, in your opinion, some form of the COVID as early as 2017?
On its face, I don't know. I can't say. I have a friend, the person who interviewed me, T.D. Awabi, who worked in a biolab initially in his career, and then has gravitated to a serious researcher. He reviewed peer-reviewed studies, and he would tell you that not only the testing that you want people to have is flawed, but the concept of how we respond to virus and virus issues is also flawed. But for your particular case, I say that what happens with you happens with a lot of other people because the science, quote unquote, has been highly impacted by money and desire for profit seeking. And so a lot of things that get passed around as treatment, especially in the form of vaccines, holds a little bit of weight when you add in the factor that you can't sue companies for the vaccine. That's how protected and entrenched they are. So was it a derivative of what later we called COVID-19? It could very well possibly be. They're already pairing SARS with that took place around 2017 with COVID, saying it's one form of it. I don't know what they're doing to manipulate or mess around with this whole thing, but the best evidence shows is that how they're responding to it is different because when you were going through what you were going through, and others too, as many of those who died in 2017 were 70,000, we allowed herd immunity to take shape so that people could adapt to the situation, and therefore its virulence and ability to cause harm further was lessened over time. The way that we've done things now, responding to COVID-19, we have effectively prolonged it. It's going to continue to be a problem, so much so that they're already talking now. They're going to, at some point, there's talk of requiring people to get vaccinations, and proof of which they have to show in order to either leave their homes or even possibly to gain employment. Now, this should be of a concern to us since the very tactical views many scientists are talking about, they're just not being interviewed, saying that by isolating and quarantining healthier aspects, people with more intact immune systems in the society, by quarantining them, it's preventing them from getting the herd immunity effect, and therefore lessening the impact of the potential of a second wave. Now they've effectively prolonged the situation, and because we've not been able to affect full herd immunity status, when the second wave arrives, people are either going to be begging for the vaccine or who don't receive some sort of natural immunization against the full impact of the second wave. We've now set up people to die. So we have also, as a result of what I just shared earlier, we are now setting up, because we've abided by their desire to quarantine everybody. And I believe that's the bigger culprit here. If they could justify vaccinating people, we now disproportionately set up Black people in a leading situation, ADOS people in a leading situation, to disproportionately live in those toxic homes that will make them more susceptible to illnesses they're already experiencing, but will rise to the surface, and more susceptible to this COVID-19, as well as extending the time frame so that potential deaths can occur. And those deaths will all during the second wave. And those deaths will also disproportionately be reflected among ADOS lives. That's what we've done, or we've allowed to have done. So it's worse than people think it is right now. And I have to go back to this earlier thing. Two things are happening. One thing, for specific to COVID, forget seasonal flu, which happens is seasonal. I believe that they're conflating those two. But on one hand, the initial numbers announced for the estimated total deaths of the United States was initially 240,000. And I sincerely believe that people are responding to that initial figure. Well, it has been downgraded since time before the state started following the quarantine rule to 60,000. And the 60,000 is 10,000 less than 70,000 in 2017 with no quarantine. So what is also going on? There's something else also going on here, and that's the next part I want to go to, but I noticed you had another statement to make or a question.
What can we do? Get more active? Yes, but we have an amazing letter that we are circulating that I think needs to be revised with this information that you're sharing.
I agree with you, and I heard you saying it earlier, and I want that because I will pass it on and I'll give it a mention during my podcast show.
Thank you so much. What I need for you I'm going to send it to you to craft a paragraph to modify and edit that letter for our COVID relief and our post-COVID relief. And that's probably going to mean, fixing the water, taking the lead out of these buildings and removing us from these public housing that's killing us. That needs to be a part of the ask. And so I'm going to ask for you to construct, when you see this letter, a couple of points and a couple of demands so we can revise this letter and recirculate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Because like I said in the first show, I am tweeting the Congressional Black Caucus, the National Urban League, and the NAACP daily with that letter. Yeah. This needs to come into that letter.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so go ahead. Did you have another point to that?
Well, yeah, to that, specifically to the CBC, or what the Black Agenda Report people affectionately call the Black Misleadership class, they should be embarrassed by the years and months and or years they've been spending advocating for people at the border and not advocating for ADOS life. It's abominable. And the stuff that I'm going to share with you later when we get into the economics of this, it's going to be absolutely shocking how blatantly they have betrayed us. That was the only point I wanted to make here.
Well, let's get into that point. Let's get it. Let's go. Expound on that, please.
There's also an economic collapse. And I'm just going to ask you, just to hopefully make my point. If you don't, that's all right too. That a lot of headlines from January 20th of this year started connecting COVID, the impact of COVID, how it would disrupt the supply chain, with the need for the Fed to be spitting out as much as $1 trillion a day. Has that been what you've observed, that the COVID pretty much has caused this economic problem?
Yes, while they continue to say that the stock market is healthy, we're not in a recession. How in the world are they saying we're not in a recession when folks aren't making any money and they're not spending any money and businesses have to close as a result?
Well, one way they can say that with an honest face, because we've allowed them to get away with separating the market, the economic market, from the people market. We've allowed them to establish a system whereby wealthy billionaires can trade and exchange money and investments among themselves, which improves stock market numbers. We've also allowed them to convert it since the 70s into a pain index, in that we can do harmful things to ourselves and to others, and it generates a positive GDP. Because we allowed them to do that and not hold people accountable for maintaining regulations or strengthening other regulations, and allowing them to divorce a market that allowed them to globalization, is a term that they started coming up with, to justify taking out high-paying jobs from our society and transplanting them around the globe. And they're saying, well, we have to do this to compete in the marketplace. Well, this is well before the rise of China, which is a part of what American corporations helped China rise. Now they're regretting that. But it was a part of their lust for their God profit, and not the American way, which I don't know it was ever there, but they really betrayed it. And we, the American people, allowed them to get away with it. And people that paid the worst cost of that were Adolf. So that's the reason why they can divorce the popularity of the stock market, and these trillions of dollars that are being spent to help the market is helping them to be successful. Therefore, for them, there's no recession. But for the rest of the American people, you're right. We're experiencing that, and we've been increasingly experiencing that reality since Reaganomics, since Reagan. And that's the reason why they celebrate him. So even though he left his office being one of the lowest points that any president has ever been rated. So how are people celebrating him? It's because the wealthy elite, white elite, are celebrating him. And they keep it bombarding us with this periodically with how popular and great he was, so that a lot of people, particularly those among the white population, believe it, despite his in the term reality. He was one of the worst presidents in the nation until Bush Jr. So how can people do that? Well, it's called propaganda. And propaganda is rather effective. And COVID-19 is another example of how effective it is. So let me go into the economics piece.
Okay, hold that, please. I need for you to draft your own letter as an addendum to this COVID stimulus demand, and I want your demands in that letter. I'm going to promote your letter along with our original. I will still send you a copy of the original.
Yes, ma'am.
And we may try to squeeze some of your talking points into that original. But I need your letter. I need your letter.
Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead into the that's what God just gave me, that you need your own letter, and I need to promote it and push it along with this petition. This letter needs to be attached to the petition in the same way our initial demands are there, because, yeah, Joelle Jones, state senator, and I'm naming it and claiming it for her, says this is damn deep. And she remembers my cough. And I thank you, Trey, for being on the live. And I thank you, Joelle. I thank Vicky. All of you. Some of you I cannot see on this live, but I will be sharing. Hi, Brenda. Thank you for being on the live. Brenda says, my brother's classmate, both of his parents died the same day, 80 years old. My deepest sympathy for your loss. Oh, I cannot. I am so glad you're on the show. I knew when you were commenting in my thread, I had to make you a friend and bring you on the show because you were so sharp. And Joelle, I was like you. What this brother had to share in my feed made my jaw drop to the floor. And that's why I asked him to be a guest on my show, as I will be a guest on his show. God has richly blessed us to have you and I cross paths. My God. Go ahead with the economics. Let's dig in. Thank you, guys. I will be repeating this show the way I've been repeating the other shows. This will be watch party after watch party after watch party. And Joelle and everybody in this live, I need for you to make this go viral. Go ahead with the CBC and the economics. I need to hear about the CBC being complicit in our demise and devastation and ruin in this country that our ancestors built with their lives.
First, I want to give a shout out. I don't give many shout outs to Tony and Vets because when this first came out, some people among us were not taking it seriously, and they should be credited with saving people's lives, the people that listen to them and follow through and protecting themselves. So I thank them for that. So the economic piece, I asked you the question, did you see the coronavirus being an excuse used to plug trillions of dollars into the economy? And you rightly do, because a lot of headlines, particularly beginning in January 20th, began telling us that we have to throw in all this trillions of dollars, printing it out of thin air, a lot of it being done by just moving the decimal point to the left, so putting a plug in for reparations. They could do the same thing with us on this. With that being said, they began to connect the coronavirus with the problems of the economy. And in any effective propaganda, in any effective lie, it has to hold a kernel of truth. That makes sense to people. And it does make sense to people to know that the coronavirus is happening in a place where we have taken our manufacturing base, so that only a few white elite families can benefit from that. They have effectively allowed, with the Wuhan, China, being a manufacturing area and a polluting area, that would affect the supply chain. So in that sense, coronavirus's impact is true. But it is not true in terms of our economic meltdown or what was happening to the stock markets around that time. And a report I'll also send you a link to that was written in December of 2019, they then were remarking about the fact that by December of 2019, $6.6 trillion had already been printed out to these same people. But in your mind, they began the count at roughly January 20th, and people think it's around $10 trillion now, when in fact it's closer to $20 trillion.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Let me ask you, let me jump in real quick. Do you think that this is a new world order construct to make China the lead and make us a third world country?
I think it's a little bit more complicated than that, given the other thing I could share with you. I just didn't want to get off track of where I wanted to go today.
No, go for it. Let's finish that thought, but I had to jump in because Lord knows I'll forget it.
There's some information I posted up on my page from an investigative reporter, which we don't get to hear from anymore because it's not a profit motive, because it could conflict with other white elite investments in the country, which is why investigative reporting is not highly funded in these organizations. They found evidence of Release of Information Act, finally got it released, where American elites are envious of China because they know China will overtake us. They were originally pegged to do so in 2016, but they didn't because they overcapitalized and they built like 8 cities with nobody to live in them. And so their advance surpassing the United States was sort of undermined because of their greed. And they imitated the West. But because the degree to which they are communists that we claim to hate, there's some white elites that really enjoy fascism and have found a way, because of the virus, to institute surveillance measures and technology measures that will allow them to better emulate China. And therefore, controlling people's comings and goings is one of the other things they wanted to do. They wanted to control. And coronavirus is allowing them to do that. But I can give you more specifics there. but I really want to get back to the economic piece.
Well, we'll have you back,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
go ahead, please.
And I'll have even more information by then on that. So what happened is that equity markets, and specifically the repo market, where they reproduce loans and other things to pay other people off as creditors, it has a certain value. And they usually commonly run between 1% and 2% in terms of the repayment of such loans. Well, overnight, in late October, and specifically by September 17th of last year, it shot up from 2% to 10%. Now, this is unprecedented. That gives you an indication then of how much was being owed and how decreasing in value bank stocks were that were responsible for paying back such loans. We don't know, and this is as of September 17th of last year, how many banks were insolvent, how many banks were on shaky ground, how many banks are barely meeting their federally regulation needs or levels of function to be considered a healthy operation. We don't know that. I mean, were you told about it?
No.
These things were printed in journals that I read on occasion because I do have some investments. I don't totally go along with what Tony Yvette do because I need to eat. So I had to pay attention to those markets. And I was happy in some ends that was happening in terms of teaching those guys a lesson, because it goes back to Obama, and we really have to deal with him at some point, mentally and symbolically. What we're not told, I'm giving you some background here, so this will make a lot more sense. As a result of what happened with the first attempt at TARP in 2008, 2009, it was rejected at first because a lot of Americans were very upset with what was happening. They were knowing that the fat cats were getting paid off and that the person on Main Street had to basically suffer, and people were not okay with that. They pressured the representatives not to support it, and so it did not pass the first time. What they also supported and drove for was a hearing, an investigation as to what was causing it. Now, that's just critical. So they did that. From that, we learned that major institutions, and I'm just focusing it from the ADOS perspective, major institutions had decided to target us after we strived for it. Jesse Jackson, all the way to other CDC members, did the right thing in this sense by trying to get us through the 90s, legitimate support for home ownership, because they saw it, and I think this is an error, but it's like money more than quarterback, but I knew it at the time though, that seeing wealth accumulation through home ownership was a key factor, and I'd say of imitating white people in terms of gathering accumulation of wealth. And that's fine. But I can detract from that, but that's another story. I want to stay focused. Well, anyway, so they did. They pressured institutions, and they even wrote some legislation to make it better and easier for companies to do so. But how they saw it was another thing. They saw it as a way to fleece it. There's no other way around it. So that by 2007, 2008, it begins to crumble. And there's an excellent film that everybody should watch on this. Get them a little angry. It doesn't focus on us, but we understand what happens because one of the actors, these are real life people, and they just dramatized it. But one of the real life persons said, they're just going to end up blaming black people and other minorities for this, when it's white elites that are just robbing the country. And you get a full explanation in this movie. It's called The Big Short. And you get a full explanation of what happened there, because to this day we still don't understand it. And I'm going to bring it all home because it's going to make so much sense. So by
what was the name of the movie again? This is not allowing me to type it in. If one of my family, this thing won't let me type. You said The Big Short?
Yeah, exactly. Brad Pitt was in the movie.
The Big Short family. If one of you could please type that in the chat, I'd be so grateful. I'm not, for some reason, I'm not able to type.
Yeah, that's an excellent movie. It explains exactly what went down. And I submit, family, it's happened again. It's being covered by the COVID. It's happened again. So there's legitimacy to COVID. I'm not saying that it's not. Please don't go overboard. What I'm saying is that white elites in September of 2017 had done the same thing to the economy they had done it by 2008 in this country, which caused the economic depression, worldwide depression, what they call the Great Recession. But in reality, it was white elite robbery of the Treasury. And it's happening again. And we're not even talking about it. We're not even thinking about it. They got us freaking out over the virus. And I submit that both are right. There's a truth to people dying as a result, even though I believe they're also conflating it with the seasonal flu, same symptoms, to justify people being, on one hand, scared of that and not looking at the other hand, what the other hand is doing. The other hand is ripping off the American people again. They couldn't do it the same old way because the first time they did it, as I was trying to get through, and I'll get through it this time, we went against their passing tarp. And we had hearings. And from those hearings, we learned that the black ADOS was targeted with junk mortgages. They sold those junk mortgages around the globe. Some of them saying, you know, this stuff is junk. And they say, we know it, but you're going to sell it anyway because you're going to make money. And they did that in Iceland and Greece. They sold them to Greece. Greece crumbled. And in Iceland, same thing, but they held their people accountable and put them in jail. Obama gave them, kept them out of jail, provided them bonuses through TARP that finally got passed. And no one was held accountable for what they did to us, but a low-level Islamic guy, a Muslim. He's the only one that went to jail out of all that. And a few black people went to jail who operated state level. I know one out of Texas went to jail for their participation in what other elite whites were doing, but won't to this day see a day in jail from that. There still should be people in jail from what happened in 2008 that are not. So what Obama did in addition to that, they wrote into further legislation allowing for, and this wasn't popularized by the media that should be informing the public, they made it okay that all need happen when banks get in trouble is they submit a detailed document explaining why they need help, and the Fed could then choose, without investigation, without inquiry as to what's going on with the institutions, just start printing money, or as former Fed Chairman Bernanke said in a 60 Minutes interview, just move the decimal point of a count to the left. And so that's what they were doing since September 2019. And so by December, when I come across an updated version of what happened in 2017, because I've been following it on the, I've got it right here. I'll give you that title. I'll also send that link.
Please.
So that by December of 2019, it had the amount of money the Fed was regularly sending them, again, without investigation, without acknowledging to the public what was going on, because the public would directly have questions. It had risen to $6.6 trillion. But for the American people, by January, after being freaked out about COVID-19, by the 20th of January, I started noticing in the news, COVID is causing the need for the Fed to be printing out all this money. But I knew that was a lie. I knew that the money that had been printed that was already going on before COVID was even in people's awareness. In September 17th of 2019. So it's a lie. So if people walking around or listening to us now, thinking that the COVID has caused the economic problem, even though Wall Street's doing well because of the trillions of dollars are being given, they've been given those trillions of dollars since September. But they're being paired with COVID in the state of the mind of the public so that they would believe that the COVID caused the justification for all this, when really, in fact, they're allowing for more white elite robbery. COVID, they're using COVID as a means of covering their robbery of the system, of the public, the citizens' taxes, the citizens' trust, the citizens' treasury. And that is from Global Research. The title is The Repo Fiasco. The Fed's cash injection can stop soaring. So that was the effect. And this was printed in December. We were knowing that the stock market was doing well in 2019. Well, one of the reasons why it was doing well is because they were getting these cash injections to the tune of $6.6 trillion that was helping them to look like they were doing well. When you see the movie, The Big Short, they're guys, these white guys, who saw what was happening. They saw that the mortgage industry was highly rating junk mortgages. They were all going to go to crap. And the junk mortgages was ninja loans. They would give loans to people that didn't have the usually required regulatory support to even ownership. And they were, of course, disproportionately white people, but they were also extending that to black people, and they fashioned particular loans that would increase in value over a 2 to 5 year period that would basically be beyond the person's ability to pay. And they knew that. And they targeted those types of loans to even black people, African, ADOS people that could afford appropriate and had scores for appropriate loans that weren't going to be these blow-up loans. And so when it all fell and done, what did Michael Bloomberg say when he was reflecting on what happened in 2008? He said what became the popular knowledge and circulated as propaganda in the media system did. This collapse, what contributed to this collapse were black people because they wanted too much home they couldn't afford. When it was planned. They were planned to explode.
Joel says, let me jump in real quick with some of my comments. Thank you, Hassan Francis, for joining the live ADOSDC. Joel says, yes, Greece faltered. Then Germany had to pull the whole nation out of bankruptcy. You are speaking the truth. The Federal Reserve is not requested by the U.S. government. It is organized and controlled by private owners.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
And that's always been the case with it. But this is just a new type of fraud that's going on that we're not even being focused on. And that's what I'm also trying to say. We need to be concerned about COVID and seasonal flu and anything that will danger our immune system. But it's being hyped up in a lot of ways. I'm not discounting those who passed on, but I submit the people that have passed on now, when it's only expected to go as high as 60,000, 70,000 died in 2017. That means if we had the same type of coverage that we have today in 2017, then we'd already be used to all this, right? But we didn't have this coverage. So there's a reason why we're getting this coverage now. And I submit that another reason why these things are dangerous, and there's a problem, but it's also being covered more so that we're looking at this and being freaked out about it and not looking at what happened to the money. And so the retail market is just another type of market that these people have also exploited. And we're doing it so bad that by 2017 in September, they decided to raise the rate from 2% to 10%, and they did so overnight because of how blatantly these people were not paying back their loans. So-called responsible elite whites were not paying back these loans. And this stems from, okay, I want to finish one thought. So Obama and Congress at that time knew that the white elites were embarrassed to having to get before the American people, have their emails brought out where they were even bragging about doing all this. I mean, I remember it. I know a lot of your listeners do too. We also learned that particular institutions, whether it be Countrywide and the other company recently that's paid off some sort of response because they were targeting black people as a result of that. In their emails, they were talking about how they were going to appeal to the black people, how they were going to focus on black churches and particularly to sell these things that you were going to erupt. And so what did Congress do? Instead of strengthening the law to prevent this, because there were laws to prevent this. Namely, now we get to go back to Clinton. Clinton sold out the Democratic Party. That's another reason why we shouldn't have been voting since then, to finance capital and other interests that were not connected to the old money, which was petroleum, which is where the Republicans are. They tackled on to technology centers, Silicon Valley, and finance capital, where they would come up with all these types of super duper finance products. And so he sold us out. That's when it was official, when him and Al Gore in the early 90s undermined the two attempts that Jesse Jackson did. What was good about the Jesse Jackson run, not so much Jesse Jackson, but what the runs were good for, is they did create a coalition between working class whites and blacks. and that could have sustained the party. But there are people in the party and donors who did not want to rely on that because it could make things more fair for the common workers. NAFTA and other things hadn't happened by that time. So Clinton and Gore effectively established the Leadership Democratic Party, or Leadership Democratic Council, and created a new way that you can be accepted into the Democratic chain of events, from policymakers to also people who run for things. This is another reason why the CBC, they bowed to it. They could have called them on the couch. They could have said, you're betraying the coalition we got here built. But they didn't. They went along with it. Because another thing happens, and this is a little bit of sympathy to them and to your discussion with the lady earlier. The killings of our leaders, and you mentioned our leaders of Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and we can also go on to Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy and Jack Kennedy. But particularly to Adolf, our Black leaders were assassinated. Well, that scares a lot of people, I think, to this day. We also know that when we get into leadership, and maybe if our Black elected officials do our bidding and do see our needs, well, they're the ones that are investigated first. They're the ones that are disproportionately sidelined and through procedural methods that undermine their effectiveness. So at some level, you begin to teach the electorate and those who are willing to be Black and run to give in. You corrupt them. And so you got people that are basically self-serving and go the way the leadership wants them to go. Well, by Clinton and Gore, they've become corrupted and they were going by way of finance capital. So they support NAFTA, they support the crime bill, and some of that there was justification for it. I'm not going to pretend that there weren't. I was working in alcohol and drugs at the time, and so there was the fervent cry from the grassroots to do something about the crime that was there, and there was not so much thought into the root causes like CIA drugs. But again, I'll go off on another tangent. But staying focused on this, by the time of the end of the Clinton era, he had a choice, and by 1996. One of his cabinet members, Robert Reich, you see him a lot now, well, he regrets in a documentary he made a few years ago, 3 years ago, that he wished that he would have raised more of a ruckus because he warned Clinton the financial policies you're enacting are going to create a demagogue in the future. It'll be either a very left demagogue or a very right demagogue. But either way, you're creating the vestiges. Because this is old, this has been repetitive. Meaning that the policies that Clinton was creating was going to create such a cry among the people, they'll accept any charlatan that could rise to seem to answer to them and answer to their needs because of the economic policies. One of the key economic policies that plays a role in this robbery is the removal or repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act. The Glass-Steagall Act was enacted in the 1930s to compensate for what caused the Great Depression, which was colluding among banks that would allow investment loans of the banking institutions to be commingled with consumer loans, allowing them to leverage that even further in the next phase, which was requiring very little money to make large bets in the market. But what happens when they lose? They lose big. And they knew they were losing big in the area of real estate with these ninja loans they created and junk loans, we call them, the junk mortgages we call them now. And there was a big heck to pay because a lot of those were done fraudulently. And that was what was released in those hearings. So Obama worked it not only that the Fed could automatically start squirting in liquidity, they call it, which is again cash, moving as a decimal point or printing new money. They also worked it in, they didn't have to tell Congress the particulars as to what those funds were going to and what institutions were going to and what state those institutions were. All that's out of the public eye. So by January 20th, with the help of Clinton, with the help of Obama, no, I have to pick on Republicans for this moment because the Democratic Party has been co-opted. What Clinton Gore did in the early 1990s. And so by this time, Obama had allowed the Fed to automatically print some money. All they needed was a request from an institution, and they'd start printing. No investigation, no nothing. And here we are, by January 20th, they've commingled the virus rise and its impact, which is true. It did have an economic impact of delaying the chain of production coming from China by a 3-month period. At the same time, we've got all these trillions of dollars it's not just to cover that lack of production period and the fact that companies are relying on it, it's also to cover these large bets that were made in the repo market that had been gone bad since September 2009.
Let me let you take a breath while I read Joelle's comments. This is Joelle Jones speaking in the chat. She is running for Ohio State Senator. And she said the Federal Reserves are not regulated by the U.S. government. It is organized and controlled by private owners. Requested was her first word. She has replaced requested. They are not regulated. The next she says, the people are dead. The people that are dead are considered acceptable casualties. Wow. Then she says, yes, churches all over the nation suddenly had balloon mortgages that came due. Then the ADOS community were not only trying to save their homes, now they were forced to save the church as well. This is so deep, it reaches all the way to hell.
With what I'm going to tell you next, it's gonna be the Emmett Till again. You're gonna see it clearly, I know.
Well, let's keep going because we're already jaws to the floor, mortified by what you're sharing, but it makes absolute and complete sense.
It is. It does. It is. Okay, so economics. What happened as a result of the crash or the Great Recession, or again, what I prefer to call white elite robbery of the Treasury of 2008, 2009? Well, not only did Obama and Congress fix it so that they could not be investigated, so they could just go ahead and squirt it without any public intervention because they may ask questions. What are the state of these banks? What have they been doing with the money? Were they placing too many bets in these shaky dealings to win big, but they didn't win big? They lost. They lost so much that the other creditors were willing to look the other way and to give them a chance to pay it back, or to, again, their old buddies they go to the golfing place with and say, oh, yeah, I'll catch you next month, Jack, or whatever. And then they just got fed up and just started raising those repo rates, which caused them to be churning out all this money. We don't know because we were not even inquiring. So what happened as a result of that white elite robbery of 2007, 2008, 2009, culminating in the TARP, which further just exacerbated the robbery, which is exactly what's happened now with the so-called COVID legislation that was passed. We just transferred more money to the same group of people. Okay, so what happened then? I was a therapist. I worked with, okay, stay focused, because I get loud there. I was a therapist. I worked with, at one time, gang members, gang intervention specialists, all the way to working with highly challenged populations, I'll put it that way. I was the guy you've seen on television on crime shows, the psychologist that would come in and analyze the situation with the young person and family and give an assessment to the court and also provide treatment. We at one time were also the best at what we did in the country for 6 to 7 years straight. Really took pride in what we did there. We really changed lives. Within 2 to 3 years, we started noticing some things, particularly among the ADOS children that came to us. Usually, again, because of the horrible nature of the crimes they would commit, which is how they would see us and how we would interview them, they would come to us with maybe 1 or 2 diagnosable things. Some of it is because they would minimize what they had done. Well, 2 to 3 years after this white elite robbery of the Treasury, we started noticing that our children were coming in, and particularly ADOS children definitely were coming in, with as much as quadruple the number of mental health diagnosable issues. And their parents and or caregivers, all too often grandparents, their level of diagnosable mental health problems had virtually doubled. To this day, nothing's been done. To this day, no, we have lost, as a result of that happening by 2013, 53% of our collective wealth as a group. Now, people know this intellectually, but how does it translate? Well, it translates into what I shared with you. Overly stressed ADOS group members were the children that had to come to me were committing even worse crimes. They were under more stress and they were under more mental health difficulties. Not only the children were, but their caregivers and parents were. And we didn't get a bailout when we knew that we were directly targeted. So people talk about what Obama didn't do. Well, I was living on an aspect of the front line as to what did not happen and what Black people were left with. I treated them in Dayton, Ohio.
What?
Yeah, it's a small world. And I did it for 20 years. And I had to leave for a lot of reasons, besides betrayal, but I had to leave because I realized that my being there, as great as what work we were doing, was ultimately putting Band-Aids on bullet wounds, kind of an old term out of the 80s. But that's effectively what we were doing because we're working within the context of a system that has allowed that. I mean, it was so blatant. It's always been the case. But after the great white elite robbery of the Treasury in 2008 to 2009, it was evident that ultimately I symbolized a place for treatment, but by not dealing with the root cause, which was so obvious, the higher increased levels of stress brought about by disenfranchisement and lower employment rates and discrimination in the workplace and discrimination in loan acquisition and home ownership and how it was devastated by this white elite robbery. Well, it was obvious that my being there justified, well, this is a place where you get help for that stuff. So you can get help, get all patched up, and sit right back out there to the meat grinder. I refused to participate no longer in that system. So I moved on. I left in 2016. Now we're at a new juncture with a renewed robbery that's taking place. I suspect it will have the same devastating effects. We, as a group, losing 53% of our collective wealth, to this day have not been made whole as a result of being targeted by those financial markets in the area of mortgage, so much so that we are in the mid-60s level of home ownership. It has so destabilized the mentality and mental health well-being of Black people that we're not dealing with. Therefore, we're getting lost still in aspirational stuff that Tony and that talk about so much. They're so right on that. Because I was living on the front lines where it did get worse because of that loss of wealth. And we were there. And this is just one agency. How about the millions that are not being reporting this stuff? And the crimes when we began in 2003, roughly, the average person in line was 16 white male, and they were just accused of some of the things that they were accused of. By the time I'm leaving in 2016, the average became 12 years of age, definitely African American or ADOS, and they had several victims, some of them even adults. And nobody's dealing with that. Nobody's talking about that. That's how messed up things are. Now, by 2019, 2020, we're in the midst of another white elite robbery of the Treasury that we're not even looked at because we're so freaked out about the virus that I suspect another wave of mental health disorders will result because of what's happening. People are directly losing their jobs as a result of both the COVID-19 and the economic robbery that's taking place.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Just give me a moment.
I know.
I'm from Dayton, Ohio. And just to hear this, Joelle Jones is in Dayton, Ohio. She's born and raised. So forgive me, audience, but this is hitting me in a way that is
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry, guys. Just
We need to, I'm like your sister earlier, we need more of the grassroots, the people that could participate in the grassroots to do more, because we have endangered life. I haven't even shared with you the resulting national figures that were known even in Obama's era, which you know why we got the Promise Keeper unfunded program. He was forced to do that because it was so embarrassing with what I'm about to tell you now. Now, this is what I was experiencing in Dayton, but he had to respond to what was happening across the nation. Now, what do you think happens to a group, the Black Collective, that suffers a 53% loss in their wealth within a span of 3 years after this event? By 2013, definitely, they were reporting they'd lost over 50% of our collective wealth. So what does that mean? How does that translate into our lives? Well, I saw that as a therapist working with those groups. But nationally, there began another evil statistic that I don't see enough of us talking about, although I've flashed it as often as I can get a chance to. And
we're not talking about it because we don't know. We don't know about this. I didn't know about this. I knew I had a deep resentment towards Obama. I didn't know all of this. I knew he was instrumental in devastating us as a people. I didn't know it ran this deep. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would say like 12 years of age we were getting them with quadruple the number of mental health deficiencies, but I also left out that young children were committing similar offenses as young as age 5. And I even volunteered before I left. I started volunteering because I saw the need so great. And it wasn't just Black children, it was also white children. But again, Black children are disproportionate among the numbers. They were also started committing inappropriate crimes, but they were so young they couldn't be in the system. So this lady was out of her kind heart with some investors, got a treatment center together, and I saw how drastic it was. I was going frantic at the time, saying to my colleagues, we need to be doing more. We tried to get them in schools, but they didn't want it. And so I volunteered the last year and a half of my tenure. I volunteered at this place because children as young as 5 were committing crimes they weren't committing 10 years ago.
And why was that? Because they were economically wiped off the grid.
What's happened to us as a group, we've got more people working more jobs, more stress, less time with their children, and also often being blamed for not spending enough time with their children. It's a catch-22. It's a double end game that results in loss. And like I shared with you, just talking about the implications of the virus, we're in a double end loss. No matter what we do, we're going to end up in a causative death spiral. And so economically, the same thing is true. It introduces another level of stress. That's another thing that's also, we're not only in highly polluted environments, but we're in a much more stress because of our economic lives that also further undermines our immune system. Let alone the observable behavior that people say is pathological, but it is not pathological, it is systemic. And so that's another reason why people really need to get activated. So what was happening by 2013, the journal started noticing something across the nation. Because in this particular horrible category, white children had always dominated. And that was suicide. But after 2013, Black children ages 5 to 13 started killing themselves in higher numbers than white children in that same age group. By 2015, 2016, children, young people, ages 14 to 19, African Americans, ADOS, started killing themselves in higher numbers, outpacing other racial and ethnic groups. So that we have, by 2017, 5 years of age to 19 years of age, African Americans, ADOS, killing themselves more than any racial or ethnic group. And what Obama had to do, because he realized those numbers I just shared with you, he did something. He created the unfunded Brothers Keepers Group. Because he was afraid of, and the CDC helped to shield him with this because they didn't make these deaths known on a national level as to what was happening to Black children. And this could be directly tied to 53% of our wealth being ripped from us. That they got on the bandwagon and celebrated the Promise Keepers. This was something he was doing that was focused on Black children, particularly Black males, and it was going to be helpful. It was so that when these numbers, they were concerned that these numbers I just shared with you would get out and embarrass them. This was the way to cover. Well, sadly, the numbers didn't get out, no matter how much I fingered or put it on my Facebook thing, and I get very little, hits or likes from that because people don't want to deal with that. People want to have to, because then you have to do something. But I would tell people these things. They have to do something, and people don't want to step out of their comfort zone, but they can go on and on about that. But now I'm back to the CDC. Guess when the CDC decides to focus in on this particular problem for 5 to 19-year-old Black children. In the summer of 2019, they announced they're going to do a study on this interesting phenomenon. When they knew, like I did, because I worked in the field, I read the report. They knew, but they were giving Obama cover because they didn't want him embarrassed by this, because then it could lead to an uproar. Well, it should have led to an uproar. And for them to claim they need to study this is insulting, just like their calls for studying reparations. It's insulting. Our children are choosing to take their own lives because the ever-present pressure of being ADOS in America. And at one time, we could better defend them, but being overworked and overburdened ourselves, apparently it's getting very difficult for everybody to survive. We hear about the opioid epidemic, but we're not talking about the crack epidemic, not crack, but the cocaine epidemic that's disproportionately affecting Black people, particularly Black men, the same way it's affecting the opioid epidemic is affecting white men. Cocaine is what's taking most of us out, not opioids. Although we are across the nation beginning to increase and overtake that and catch up with whites in that. But that was our health concern, was cocaine, not opioids. But we don't know that because we're not, trained to look at the literature, or the media is doing its propaganda work, keeping things from getting us in a ruckus, keeping us from getting upset. And they've done that in various ways. They just couldn't have. They're probably doing it now with continued deaths of Black people at the hands of police. That's still going on. It slowed down significantly, but it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, amen to that.
So this is another treachery that's being perpetrated, all of it by omission, and now it's being covered by the coronavirus. We're not even, what's happened to our children is not even in our minds in terms of just keeping them away from the virus. When they need mental health support, chances are very high. And the adults in their lives need mental health support because it's contributing to them choosing not to be in this life, disproportionately than other groups. And that's pretty much what I have to share today. That's all full circle now.
I thank God for you. Get involved. You're going to draft me a letter as an addendum to our initial demand to make it cohesive as one COVID stimulus demand letter, that we are going to get 500,000 signatures on that petition. And I will be circulating this letter through the Twitter space daily. I need that letter from you as soon as you can focus on it. I will share the links that you've shared with me in the Facebook when the show concludes, on how to access you, your show, your podcast, and the metaphysical co-host that you shared about in her art. Was there anything else you were trying to add?
No, I was going to add the statistics and the reports on Black children committing suicide.
I need all of that, please, right now. And I also need for you to share with me about your victory over COVID. so that we can share with our ADOS family how they can overcome COVID and not die from it. So those two things. Let me read for my co-host, my audience. Corbett Dumas, thank you so much for being on the live. In the winter, the second resurgence of COVID-19 is supposed to return. How will this look if it's already this bad? Joelle Jones says we need to create a PSA for families to prepare for this fall winter COVID-19 return geared towards ADOS families. Joelle, I am happy to do that PSA if you want to write that narrative for me. Michael William Anthony Brown, ADOS Houston, thank you. Yes, we need that data. Thank you, brother. Go ahead with the data of our beautiful children committing suicide. We need those stats. Could you run those stats and then share with us about your COVID victory?
For me personally, I don't know specifically if it was COVID. I only suspect that it was because it did hold some of the symptoms that were in line with COVID. The particular one was diarrhea. I, like you, when you talk about yourself and illness, especially the seasonal illness, I usually don't get them either. Even though my doctors over the years have tried to get me to do the shot, I said, no, I'm never going to do that.
Let me stop you, please. I'm so sorry. Don't lose your thought. The audience wants your social media information and your podcast. If someone can type it, because for some reason I'm unable to, I was going to copy and paste everything at the close of the show, but my audience wants it now.
Yes, ma'am. Articles of ADOS is the title of our podcast.
Articles of ADOS. If somebody could please type in the name of Dawood Jiazan. Did I say it right? Jiazan. Dawood, D-A-U-D, Jiazan. It's spelled in the caption here, G-E-A-Z-A-N. Articles of ADOS is his show, his podcast. Go ahead, please.
And my Facebook page is my name, Dawood Jiazan. And we also have a Facebook presence with Articles of ADOS group and the Articles of ADOS page.
Could you repeat that? Somebody, they're typing.
Articles of ADOS.
Thank you, Joelle. Do you have a Facebook page called the same?
Yes, ma'am.
Articles of page. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Articles of ADOS page. We have an Articles of ADOS group.
Articles of ADOS group. I need every ADOS to sign up on that page so you can follow Articles of ADOS. He also has a personal page, Dawood Jiazan. Did I say it right?
Correct.
Thank you. For God's sake, I keep botching your name. Forgive me.
It's all right.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Joelle. Dawood, D-A-U-D, Jiazan, G-E-A-Z-A-N. Articles
Capital
of capital A, D-A-U-D, capital G-E, capital A-Z-A-N. I've typed it in the title that's running here on the page. I will let him finish with his testimony of the COVID and the statistics of our beautiful Black babies committing suicide while this government is yet again complicit in our genocide. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Yes. Regarding the statistics, I just know the rates had doubled since 2013 for Black children ages 5 to 13, and that was the initial reports, and it was by 2015, 2016 that those same ramifications doubled within a period of time for those Black children aged 14 to 19. And so from 5 to 19, I don't think they've those numbers have reduced any. I haven't heard any recent reports any. The last updated report I had was from early 2019 that they were still being maintained. So it's just not good.
What is the number?
I can only tell you they doubled. I don't have the figures right in front of me.
Okay.
But I can give you a link and it'll discuss those numbers in more detail.
Give me a link, please, that they can type in the chat.
Yes. We'll need to do so now because I have to look it up.
Okay, if you have to look it up, I'll type it after the show. Please share. Okay, guys, we will get you the link for the stats of our beautiful babies killing themselves because of the stress and the pressure their families are under from Obama's being complicit in robbing us of 53% of our wealth while they set us up under Trump to be distracted by the COVID for the second money grab.
Yeah, literally. And let me be more specific about what happened by 2013. As a result of losing half of our wealth by that time, specifically for Black children, they were facing the same level of poverty that Black children were facing at the time of the Second World War. That's what state they're actually in right now. Second World War II level poverty. We have the illusion that things have progressed since then because technology and mass production bring costs down. Those are just things. But the levels of poverty are still such that they're on the level of World War II existence. Access to healthcare being one thing that poverty limits, being healthcare to clean drinking water, having access to clean air. They're significantly reduced in poverty. Bronchitis to pneumonia are particular ailments of the poor. So I'm not surprised of this seasonal event or COVID-19 event that we're suffering disproportionately. I suspect that's always been the case, culminating into 1964 Malcolm X saying, when white America catches the cold, we get pneumonia. That's so literally the truth. So if they're getting pneumonia, they're definitely facing death at higher rates. Logically. we didn't get the focus now. We're getting the focus now, which is good in some respects, but we didn't get the focus in 2017. I suspect we disproportionately would die then too.
Yes. Yes.
And I believe it's also being covered now because it's also helping to cover the theft that's going on. Okay, so my particular thing is because I don't usually get ill, I suspect that the symptoms that I had were very minor. It was not very deep in terms of the severity. What I did was do things to improve my immune system. So I increased my vitamin C, which is always relatively high. I increased my vitamin D, which was non-existent because I'm living on limited funds that I initially invested in. And I started increasing dark fruit and dark leafy vegetable intake. And I also added elderberry. I was told by P.D. Awadu, who's a researcher in this area, to do more about the virus than I ever could. And as a matter of fact, I usually attend his shows, or not really shows. He's getting people together to not panic. He's trying to infuse people with information so they can do what I'm attempting to do now. I'm sharing that I did specific things to increase my immune system. And that's what they, in the national level, haven't told us. They just told us to quarantine. They didn't tell us that we especially groups in highly polluted areas, what they needed to do to improve their immune system. Because that's the message they could be getting right now, but they're not. And again, that's not an accident. They're supposed to be top people in the area. That's what we hear about Dr. Fauci, whatever his name is. So why isn't he telling people to do specific things to improve your immune system? Because quarantine is just one part of it. Okay, so my friend I shared with you, he had it full blown. And he, like I, know about your immune system. And he knew that he'd kind of gotten into eating not so great. And other than that, he does very well. But he had the symptoms full blown of COVID. And towards the end, when he was getting better, he got evaluated and realized it was COVID. And all they did was do specific things to increase the immune system. His girlfriend made a concoction for him that was very helpful to him. And it was something that would help burn up his insides in a way. It would heat things up. We know that the virus does not survive in temperatures over 80 degrees. So one of the things I did after I got better, after I increased my vitamin intake, I ate dark leafy greens and dark fruits and vegetables. I did something that was placed on the internet of a gentleman who is a natural health approach to dealing with this by increasing the heat level of what you inhale. So I did it under steam, and he developed something very simple. I can also send that to you in a link. And
it's garlic, onion,
I believe so.
garlic, onion, and lime or lemon rinds, citrus rinds,
Exactly.
garlic, onion in boiling water to create like a sauna. And you put your head over and take in the steam for as many breaths for 10 minutes with the towel over your head.
Exactly. That's exactly
you do that daily when you come in from outdoors, because that particular Rasta out of Jamaica who lives in Florida has a video that I will share in this link for those of you who need to kill the virus before it travels to your lungs. This is the way to prevent it from doing so, because as he explained, the virus starts through the nasal cavity. That's why they're always taking that little Q-tip all the way through your cavity to get a sample to test for the COVID. You can kill it because once it gets in the lungs, your chances of survival, it's 50-50. It's a gamble. But go ahead. You said your friend had it full out. Yes, I absolutely will send every link in this thread, Michael, as soon as we're done here and I conclude the show momentarily. Go ahead. You said your friend, did he do this did she give him this treatment to recover?
I don't believe so. He didn't mention this, although I know he's aware of it. She gave him something like a hot tamale or something. I'll have to get back to him. But he said that what she gave him lit him up. And he said about roughly 2 to 3 days after doing what she had given him, he was done with it. He was on the way to getting better, but it wasn't totally out of him until she gave him this. And once she gave him whatever this was, it helped burn up, I guess, in the soft tissue in his lungs and in his nostrils. So he felt heat in those areas, and he felt a lot better after that treatment. And I'll say that after I got better, and it just took me 3 days, because I know I must have had a mild form or something, because I usually don't get ill. And that when I began using that steam treatment, I felt even better. So I definitely advocate for that, and I've sent that out to people that I've been in touch with. If you're afraid that you may be stressed or that you live in a high pollution area, you should be doing this thing. I now do it as a preventative measure once a week.
I love it.
When I first did it, I was doing it daily, and I definitely did need it. I realized I needed it after I was the 3rd day of treatment doing it. I said, oh my God, I'm breathing better. I'm breathing more fully, less obstructive. It really did clean me out. And that's been to be very good. But now I just, as a preventative measure, especially in those days I know that I'm out and about around a lot of people, I do the usual. I wash and everything, and then I get in and I do the steaming for 5 to 10 minutes, and I move on to the rest of my day.
This has just been I echo Joel's sentiment, or someone wrote, one of the best shows yet.
Wow.
Phoebe says you need, and I totally agree, that you need to be on Yvette Carnell's show. You guys that are close to her may want to reach out to her to have him on as a guest, because she's got 70,000 followers and I get about 1,000 views over here, but I am relying on my 1,000 to make this multiply through sharing. And I will be airing this again after I conclude under a watch party 2 to 3 times a day until all 4,000 of my subscribers have seen it and have shared it, because it is critical information. What you have shared with us has blown the cover off of what Obama, whom we put into office for 2 terms, was complicit in dragging us further down the rung of the ladder in the country our ancestors built with their lives. I knew I was more angry beyond his no to reparations. But the way you quantified today's show, it brought me to tears, but anger gets shit done.
Amen.
So I'm on fire. I want your go ahead, Dawood. Go ahead. What you were saying.
I'm concerned about the future with the number of frontline essential workers needed. We are disproportionately part of that number. That's one concern. The other part of the concern is in those areas where we've been downside or omitted because of the quarantine that's taking place. I'm concerned about that. The third concern I have is also the robbery that's taking place and the devastating effect the last robbery had on our group. I'm concerned about that robbery being commingled with the coronavirus will become an excuse to hide our further misery. That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, guess what? We've got everybody picking up bricks. I am certain that everybody will get involved and find ways to at least spread this information, spread this video, make it go viral. And I will be on this computer, like the second job it has become, pushing out the COVID stimulus and the post-COVID demands while you craft your letter. I will attach everything in this feed. The letter will be in this feed. The petition will be in this feed. A Rastafari out of Miami, his COVID killer and steam bath over your stove will be in this feed. There was one more link you were going to, I was going to share with the family that they wanted. I'm going to look through the comments because I know that Dawood is going to be sending some things too that I'm going to copy and paste. And I thank you for everyone. Joelle and Michael, I saw you typing and some of the things that Dawood was sharing. Make sure you subscribe to his page. Oh, I'm going to attach a link to one of the shows that he said was one of his best ever. I think it was his 4th show that he sent me via Instant Messenger. You're going to be well armed, family, in this feed at the conclusion of this show with a bunch of links and ways to access more information. Phoebe, I'm so glad you're doing much better. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've been sending out so many prayers and so many condolences. Correct me if I'm wrong, you had a touch of the COVID, or you had the COVID. It's so much information coming through my feed. Forgive me if I've not touched on what you were ailing from specifically, but I, like Michael and all of the ADOS family, are glad to see you on the mend. Thank you, everyone, for being on the live as my co-host. I appreciate every comment. Be sure to vote Joelle Jones for state rep in Ohio if you're in her district and are able to vote. Be sure to support Tamara Johnson-Shealy for U.S. Senate race out of Georgia at Tamara for Georgia. Be sure to go to YouTube. Subscribe to the Friends of ADOS TV show. Let's get those numbers up. Let's help those videos go viral. Make sure you're leaving comments on the show and liking the show. That's how we escalate in the algorithms for more people to find out about the extraordinary work we're doing with our guests on this show and with the ADOS movement at large. Dawood, if there are any closing remarks before I pray the prayer protection around us, I'd love for you to give any closing remarks you have. and then I can close out the show.
Yes. Regarding my friend, his mother was admitted, and he was earlier on diagnosed with COVID, and they had also.
Oh, shoot. Hold on. Family, I'm sorry. I was trying. Are you there, Dawood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, if you could speak up. I was trying to raise the volume and accidentally turned off my Bluetooth speaker. You're back on. You were explaining that your friend's mother, was this the same friend who had full-fledged
Yes,
COVID, and he survived it with, that's what you're going to share with us, the hot tamale concoction that the girlfriend.
I'll get back to you on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
And you'll also get back with us with the numbers of our Black babies that are committing suicide in each age group. Okay.
Yes,
also, could you tell, you were talking about the mother being hospitalized with the COVID. Continue.
Yes, and they wanted her to be on the ventilator, but he sort of whispered in her ear that he was concerned that there wasn't a high survivor rate with those things. And he didn't know any particulars, and this is all anecdotal, but he preferred to say, do that, and I believe she did not. And they treated her normally. In addition to that, he had been giving her some of the things that had helped him, and she had beaten it about 2 weeks too. She got out of the hospital about a little over a week ago.
Praise the Lord for some victory in these COVID-19 streets that are the distraction for the government's robbing the storehouse, pillaging the storehouse while we fight COVID. Look at the distraction they have placed in front of us to our early demise. I want you to remember this when you go to the polls.
Yeah.
I am voting. Oh, go ahead. Yes, sir.
So the final thing I would like to say is love yourself.
Thank you.
And love yourself by being active in reversing our demise and better protecting our children.
Amen. I allow God to use me because, as I tell my audience often, you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the hands and feet of God. You are the living temple of the Spirit of the living God. And it is up to us to save ADOS. And as you guys know, I love us Black. I love us strong. And with that said, I'm going to pray our prayer protection. We will be having Dawood back, probably sooner than next Saturday, because y'all know I like to do special edition lives, and he is not only a friend to the show, he is ADOS. I thank you guys for watching. I thank you for your support. I thank you for making this video go viral. I thank you for making the petition go viral. I thank you for sharing every link that will follow in this feed post show. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over ADOS, ADOX, and its allies, BDOAX. Wherever God is, especially within you, wherever we are, that God most certainly is. And I don't give a rip how big this challenge is. We are on the shoulders of ancestors who endured far worse. That is what runs through our veins, ADOS. Don't you ever forget that the God within us is greater than this government and is greater than the COVID. So you move through these streets like you know the truth of who you are and whose shoulders you stand on. Until next time, family, You make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your day and weekend. I love you, Black. I love you, Strong. Mwah. Peace, family.